Imagine that tonight you go to bed, as usual. The city falls asleep. Cars are still moving on the roads. Airplanes cross the sky. The oceans gently sway under the moonlight. And then morning comes. You open your eyes, but something is wrong. Outside the window, everything looks normal. The buildings are still there. The trees are standing. People are going to work. But the sun is no longer moving across the sky. It is simply hanging above the horizon. At first, people think it is some strange natural phenomenon. Then an hour passes, 2, 3. The sun barely changes its position. And then humanity realizes the Earth has stopped rotating. If you like scenarios where we imagine the impossible and try to understand what would actually happen to our world, subscribe to the channel right now. Because today, we are going to explore a scenario that could turn Earth into a completely different planet. And the most interesting part, the catastrophe would not begin with what you might think, the first seconds. Right now, Earth is constantly rotating around its axis. We do not feel it because we are moving together with the planet. At the equator, Earth's surface is moving at a speed of approximately 1,670 kilometers, or 1,038 miles per hour. That is faster than most passenger airplanes, and we do not even notice it. Why? Because everything around us is moving together with us. You are moving. The building is moving. The air is moving. The ocean is moving. A car on the street is moving together with Earth's surface. Now let's imagine the most extreme version. Earth does not simply gradually slow down. It stops instantly. The planet stops rotating. But everything that is not part of the solid surface itself would continue moving due to inertia. And that would be horrifying. People, cars, trees, water, air, everything would continue moving at the speed the surface had before it stopped. For a person, it would not look like an ordinary stop. It would be as if the planet itself had suddenly struck everything alive. Buildings would collapse. Transportation would turn into deadly projectiles. The oceans would begin moving as enormous masses. The atmosphere would continue moving around the planet. Incredibly powerful winds would appear. And practically no modern city would be prepared for something like this. But one clarification is important here. This is the most extreme scenario. If Earth gradually slowed down over thousands or millions of years, the consequences would be completely different. And this version is much more interesting, because then humanity could adapt. Imagine that for some incredible reason, Earth begins slowly losing its rotational speed. Not in a second, not in a day, but over thousands of years. Humanity would not even notice at first. The day becomes slightly longer. 24 hours, then 25, then 30, then 40. Gradually, the entire rhythm of the planet changes, and the first thing we would notice would be time. Our biological rhythms developed under conditions of an approximately 24-hour cycle. Sleep, awakening, hormonal processes, animal behavior, plant activity. All of this is connected to the alternation of day and night. If the day becomes longer, life begins to change. But this is only the beginning. Imagine that Earth completely stops rotating but continues moving around the sun. Then the sun would no longer rise and set every 24 hours. Instead, one solar cycle would be extraordinarily long. The planet would move around the sun, and different areas of its surface would gradually transition from light to darkness. For a person, this would mean an absolutely new world. Imagine a city where the sun does not set for a day, not a week, but months. At first, people would be happy. More light, more solar energy, a longer summer. But very quickly it would become clear that an endless day is not a gift at all. The surface would begin to heat up. Water would evaporate faster, the soil would dry out, Plants would face completely unfamiliar conditions. And then the second stage would come, an endless night. When a certain part of the planet found itself on the dark side, the temperature would begin to fall. At first, it would simply become cold, then very cold, then deadly cold. Water would begin to freeze, the atmosphere would change, and the enormous temperature difference between the illuminated and dark sides would create extremely powerful atmospheric processes. Warm air would move toward the cold side. Cold air, back. The planet could turn into a world of gigantic winds. Today we have tropics, deserts, temperate zones, and polar regions. But this is connected not only to temperature. The rotation of Earth plays a major role. It helps shape the global circulation of the atmosphere and oceans. There is even the Coriolis effect, a phenomenon through which large masses of air and water are deflected as they move. If Earth stops rotating, this system would change radically. Places that are considered comfortable for life today could become uninhabitable, and territories that now seem too cold or too dry could gain new opportunities. Perhaps the map of Earth's habitable regions would shift closer to a certain zone between the permanently illuminated and permanently dark sides, and this would create a very strange world. Imagine a narrow strip on the surface of the planet. On one side, a permanent sun. On the other, endless night. And between them, a zone where the temperature could be much more comfortable. This could become the new center of human civilization. People would begin building cities precisely there. Perhaps they would move together with this zone. Imagine a city that over decades gradually moves across the surface of the planet to remain in the most comfortable conditions. It sounds like science fiction, but in such a world, it could become a necessity. And then geography would no longer be static. Today, a city stands in one place. In a world without rotation, people might have to constantly monitor the position of the comfortable climate zone. Now let's imagine the oceans. This is one of the most interesting parts of the scenario. Earth rotates, and this affects the distribution of water across its surface. When rotation disappears, water begins to redistribute itself. Over a very long period of time, the oceans would seek a new state of equilibrium. Water would move. Some regions could be flooded. Others, on the contrary, could become land. As a result, the map of the world could gradually change. The outlines of the continents we know today would look different. Perhaps where a city is located today, thousands of years from now there would be an ocean. And where there is water today, new land could appear, and humanity would receive a completely different planet. And what about the atmosphere? Here another problem begins. The air also moves together with Earth. If the planet's surface stops rotating instantly, the atmosphere would continue moving due to inertia. This means incredible winds. Imagine standing on the surface of Earth, which has already stopped, and the air around you continues moving at hundreds or even more than 1,000 kilometers per hour, depending on the latitude. This is not simply a strong wind. This is an atmospheric catastrophe. But even in the gradual scenario, the atmosphere would change, and most importantly, the distribution of heat would change. The sunny side would constantly receive energy. The dark side would constantly lose it. A gigantic temperature contrast would develop between them. And temperature is energy, and energy is the movement of air. Therefore, Earth's atmosphere would become much more dynamic in many regions. What would happen to plants? We often forget how strongly life depends on the rotation of the planet. Plants use light for photosynthesis, but constant illumination is not necessarily good. Plants have their own biological rhythms. For many of them, the change between day and night is important for growth, flowering, and other processes. If the sun shines for months, some plants may not survive. Other species could adapt, but this would happen gradually. After that, a domino effect would begin. Fewer plants, less food for herbivores. Fewer herbivores mean problems for predators. Insects change, birds change, entire food chains change. And ultimately, the entire biosphere changes. And what would happen to animals? For animals, the situation could be even more difficult. The migrations of many species depend on the seasons. Hunting depends on light. Reproduction is often connected to the length of the day. Some animals are active during the day, others at night. Now imagine a world where the day can last for months. What does nocturnal animal mean if night no longer exists? Evolution would begin working under new conditions. Over hundreds, thousands, and millions of years, new species could appear. Animals would adapt to constant light or darkness. Their eyes would change, their behavior, their reproduction, their way of finding food. Perhaps, millions of years later, Earth would once again be full of life. It would simply be a different kind of life. Humanity would lose the familiar concept of a day. Think about something so ordinary that we do not even think about it. Morning, day, evening, night. These are not just words. Our civilization is built around them. Schools, work, transportation, stores, factories. Even the concept of tomorrow is historically connected to the cycle of day and night. If the natural 24-hour cycle no longer exists, humanity would have to create a new one. Perhaps a day would last 24 hours simply by agreement, but it would be artificial time. People would work according to the clock, not according to the sun. Perhaps underground cities would not have a natural day at all. Lighting would be completely artificial. People themselves would create sunrise, exactly when they needed it. And would the magnetic field remain? This question is more complicated. Earth's magnetic field is generated by movements of conducting material in the planet's outer core. And here it is important not to confuse the rotation of Earth's surface with the processes inside the core. Stopping the rotation does not automatically mean that the magnetic field would instantly disappear. But a change in the planet's global dynamics could have consequences for its internal processes over a very long period. And if the magnetic field significantly weakens, Earth would become more vulnerable to the solar wind and high-energy radiation. For humanity, this would mean another problem, especially for satellites, astronauts, electronics, communication systems, and space infrastructure. What would happen to satellites? Satellites are another interesting point. Many of them are in orbits around Earth. Their movement depends on gravity, not simply on the rotation of the surface, so they would not fall out of the sky just because Earth stopped rotating. But the satellite system we use today would change. The geostationary orbit would be especially important. Satellites in this orbit appear stationary above one point on Earth, precisely because their orbital motion is synchronized with the planet's rotation. If Earth no longer rotates, this system loses its meaning. A satellite would no longer remain above the same point in the sky. For the modern world, this would be a huge problem. GPS, television, the internet, meteorology, navigation, military systems, all of this would have to be rebuilt. And what would happen to the moon? And here it gets even more interesting. The moon already gradually affects Earth's rotation today. Through tidal interactions, the rotation of our planet is very slowly slowing down. But if we imagine that Earth completely stopped rotating, the Earth-Moon system would begin behaving differently. The exact evolution would depend on how exactly Earth lost its rotation. But the main idea is simple. Earth's rotation and the Moon's movement are connected. Therefore, changing one element of the system would affect the other, and our familiar night sky would no longer be the same as it is today. Could a human survive? Yes. And this is probably the most interesting part. If Earth stopped instantly, the chances of civilization would be catastrophically low. But if the rotation stopped gradually, humanity would have time. And humans are incredibly good at adapting. We could create underground cities, controlled farms, artificial lighting, cooling systems, giant solar power plants, nuclear energy, new food storage systems. Cities could move or be built in the most favorable regions. Humanity might even change the very principle of life. Perhaps people would stop living on the surface. Most of civilization would move underground. There, it would not matter whether it was day or night outside the window. People would create the climate they needed themselves. Now imagine something even stranger. Earth stopped rotating not simply around its axis. It began rotating synchronously with the sun. In other words, one side of Earth would always face the sun. This is called tidal locking. In such a case, one half of the planet would receive constant sunlight, the other, permanent darkness, and between them, there would be a zone of eternal sunrise or twilight. That could be where conditions were most favorable. Imagine living in a city where the sun never rises and never sets. It simply hangs above the horizon. Always. You would never see a normal noon. You would never see a real night. And children born in such a world would not even understand why old people talk about sunrise. To them, it would sound like a myth. We often think of Earth's rotation as something insignificant. We cannot see it, we cannot feel it, we cannot control it, but it is a fundamental part of the world we have adapted to. It determines our days, it influences the atmosphere, oceans, climate, life, animal behavior, even the way we perceive time. And if Earth stopped rotating, we would understand one simple thing. We do not simply live on a planet. We live inside a gigantic system that is constantly moving. And only because this movement seems normal to us do we fail to notice how important it is. But all it would take is changing one fundamental process, and the entire civilization would have to rebuild itself. Perhaps humanity would survive the stopping of Earth. Perhaps we would build new cities, new technologies, and even learn to live without the familiar day and night. But then a much more interesting question arises. If Earth can stop rotating, what else in the universe do we consider unchangeable simply because we have never seen it any other way? And that is exactly what makes what-if scenarios so fascinating. Because behind every impossible question, there may be a completely new world hiding. Subscribe to the channel and watch the next episodes of the What If series. Because sometimes one question can make us look at the ordinary world in a completely different way.